Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here for our press briefing. And this theme is, again, about getting back to school in the fall. But before we get into that, I'm just going to remind people that we want to continue to practice our good social distancing, that, as I was just talking to our distinguished guests, keep 6 feet of distance between you and other people when you are out in public. If you're going to go to the store, wear a mask. If you're going to be inside in a confined space and you're going to be closer than 6 feet apart, that's a great opportunity to wear a mask. And of course, wash your hands often. If you can't wash your hands, then use hand sanitizer. Those are all good rules to continue to do. Also want to remind people that the whole reason we have sacrificed and put these restrictions in place and wearing the mask and all that sort of thing is about preserving our hospital system. And thanks to all the work that Nebraskans have done over these past 4 months, we've successfully been able to preserve our hospital capacity. Today, we have 41% of our hospital beds available, 43% of our ICU beds available, and 80% of our ventilators are available. We've been able to provide that hospital bed, that ICU bed, or that ventilator to anyone who's needed it when they've needed it. So everything we've done to be able to slow the spread of the virus has worked to be able to preserve that hospital capacity, and we've been successful in doing that. Also want to remind people to sign up for testnebraska.com. It's one of the ways that everybody can participate in helping to slow the spread of the virus here in our state. By signing up for that, anybody who signs up can then start getting themselves scheduled to be able to get that test. We've got 237,000 people that have signed up. We've done over 93,000 tests now, I think is where we're up to. So lots of opportunities there. We're also transitioning from the National Guard doing this to other healthcare providers, whether it's hospitals, public health departments, could be a pharmacy. So lots of opportunities throughout the state to be able to find that location, look for the times in your location. And as I mentioned yesterday, in Omaha, we're going to have 6 days a week of 1,200 tests. And then in Lincoln, we're going to be 6 days a week starting this week, 500 tests a day. So lots of opportunities, lots of schedules. Please sign up for testnebraska.com. It's a really great way that we can help make sure that we keep an eye on what's going on with this virus. Another exciting announcement that we have today with regard to Test Nebraska is that we will be expanding the capacity of our Test Nebraska lab. So we're working with Nomi Health to be able to purchase additional equipment. St. Eve's is working on hiring additional staff, and so we will be taking the capacity that we have at our current Test Nebraska lab from roughly 3,600 tests to process 3,600 tests a day up to the ability to process 7,000 tests per day. So we're excited to be able to make that announcement, and that will help us be able to, again, process tests, be able to get them turned around, and as we think about the increasing need, as we look at, for example, schools this fall, that's another reason why we want to take a look at expanding that capacity. So we're very pleased to be able to make that announcement today that we're going to be expanding the capacity at St. Eve's here in Lincoln. So this week, or the next few weeks, are the run-up to schools coming back in session. And today we've invited President Carter, who is here from the University of Nebraska, to talk about what the university is going to be doing with regard to students coming back here for the fall semester. Now, the University of Nebraska was lucky to get President Carter, and he joined right about this time this whole pandemic happened. So your first test, so to speak, was adopting to this, but very quickly made key, bold decisions with regard to how to handle the pandemic. I think it was March 12th when you announced that there would be no more in-person classes for students for the spring semester, and moved that to an online learning, and then worked with the university and the professors to be able to transition into that model of how to handle those students and be able to finish out the semester. The University of Nebraska has also been key in helping us with our quarantine, the Nebraska Accommodation Project, and helping provide that quarantine space, whether it's the campuses on UNO, UNL, UNK, so that if someone did not have a safe place to go back to get quarantined, for example, if they had an elderly parent at home, they would have an alternative. And so we worked with the University of Nebraska to provide that space. We had people taking advantage of that at UNO, a few folks at Kearney, I believe, and so forth. So we had people take advantage of that program. So we appreciate the university's partnership there. And then, of course, the university was also the group that helped us do our business survey that the Department of Economic Development used to be able to help craft our plans with regard to the CARES Act money. So again, the university playing a key role there. And of course, the folks at UNMC have been some of the advisors we've had as we've managed through this pandemic. President Carter has done a great job in making that transition and now is working with the university to be able to get prepared for the fall semester here. So we're very excited to have him here to be able to talk about those plans. And so with that, President Carter, I'll ask you to come up and talk more about the university.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Governor Ricketts. I want to give a public shout out to the governor because we would not be prepared to open up this fall were it not for the great work that he's doing with our teams to help us be prepared to open. And I'm talking specifically about personal protective equipment for our faculty, for our students, as well as the testing kits, the contact tracing. Across the board, we would not be prepared, as well prepared as we are going to be, to open up this fall without the work of the state of Nebraska. I'd also give a special thank you to the state legislature, Chairman Stinner, Speaker Scheer, all of the 49 senators of the unicameral. They have been terrific in supporting us in our efforts to make sure that we're ready to open safely as they're going through a critical time here to finish out this budget year. Now, when I was hired to come here as the 8th president of the University of Nebraska, I felt this was a special calling for me. I came here because I believe so vitally in the higher education mission, and I was excited to come here to the University of Nebraska, the only university system in the state that gives, without question, the highest value, best affordability, accessibility, I think, of almost any university in the country. As the governor already walked you through with what's happened here since the spring, we've had to make a lot of significant changes. And I just want to say how proud I am of all of our faculty and staff, our chancellors, the business community. I mean, we're all interconnected here in the state as our one large university system, 51,000 students, 16,000 faculty and staff. And we moved successfully to remote education. And I would argue we did it as well or better than probably any major university in the country. And we see that in the feedback from our students and from the work that our faculty has done. And we continue that through the summer. But as the governor also pointed out, besides the significant changes that we've made with opening up Nebraska Promise, which is free tuition for Nebraska family members that make $60,000 adjusted gross income or less, the tuition freeze over the next 2 years, the adjustment to our academic calendar, maybe one of the most significant announcements we made was early on in late April, was that we had every intention and plan to be open for our students and our faculty come this fall. And now here we are. We're 5 weeks away. And I'm here to tell you that we are ready to do it. Now, given this is a tough situation for the nation, you can follow the news in higher education. There are a lot of university campuses, especially on the coast, that are not able to do what we have been able to put together. And I want to talk to first the why. Because a lot of people say, well, why is this so important that you get that campus open? You already proved that you could teach remotely. Why wouldn't you just continue on with that? Well, the first thing I would tell you is, and I don't think this would be a surprise to anyone, the value of a post-secondary college education, especially at the undergraduate level, where about 88% of our entire student body are in that first 4 years of a college education, is so critical to their maturation. You cannot get the same level of education through a Zoom call, a Canvas, asynchronous level of remote education that you can get by physically being on campus. I'm talking about the emotional, the social, the intellectual, and yes, even the moral growth that our young students, and I'm talking the roughly 18 to 22, and even some of our adult learners that have come back to finish an education, that 25 to 35-year-old group, this is that key moment in their life where they're looking for that type of growth. And our job is not just to give them this value of education, it's to help mature them, to show them their path to be useful citizens, to go into the workforce. So this is a critical part why I consider our role in being higher education is maybe not as mission critical as the food supply chain or as hospitals or meatpacking plants, but we are certainly very important to the future of the state, the future of our economy, and the future growth of Nebraska. So I feel very passionately that we have a mission to do and that we should be doing it in person. And as the governor has talked about many times before, We are living in a pandemic. We're living in a COVID-19 world. We've learned an awful lot along the way. We've gotten a lot smarter. We have a lot better information, and we learned some common sense rules that he talks about all the time, and I'll refer to that here in a few minutes. So we have to learn how to live in a COVID-19 world and do this with the right mitigation. And that's what I'm here to talk a little bit about here today. So let me talk a little bit about the how. The first thing I want to talk about when I get to the how is how fortunate we are. We're so fortunate to be led by campus leaders like Dr. Jeffrey Gold at UNO and UNMC, Dr. Doug Christensen out at UNK, and Dr. Ronnie Green out at UNL. They have worked collaboratively across all of their campuses to include their faculty senates, their staff, the student leadership, as well as our board of regents to come up with plans that will work. So this hasn't been just policy coming from Varner Hall or central administration. This has been a collaborative work, and we've been working very closely with our partners at UNMC, one of the national leaders in how to open up a campus. They've helped guide us with a checklist or a playbook for not only our 4 main campuses, but also NCTA out in Curtis, our community colleges, our state college system, even K-12, and they're even informing professional sports like NBA, Major League Baseball, and I just learned even the cruise line industry. So we're very fortunate to have these professionals help us to how to do this the right way. I'd also say thank you to our faculty and staff. You know, this will not be a normal year. Even though we're talking about in-person education, I don't think it'll be a surprise to many of you that there are going to be some elements of our education that'll still be remote where it makes sense. And for almost all of our faculty members, they're planning not just lesson plans for one part of their education, they're often planning 2, 3, and even 4 different variations of what they would normally do. And that's about the case for just about everybody in the University of Nebraska system. I would tell you that the average person, faculty, staff, and even as our students prepare, they're working at least double, triple, or quadruple the time that they normally would for the same amount of pay with no extra thanks except the small recognition that they are going to do this mission. I can't tell you how proud I am that they are ready to do this. I'd also tell you that we're using the things that we've learned, you know, the social distancing, the cleaning your hands, the extra cleaning. We're even applying some plexiglass where it makes sense to use in the classroom. We will be utilizing masks in the classroom and on campus. And this is based on best medical advice, and this is for the confidence and trust of our students and our faculty. And make no mistake, we will be using real data, real time to make sure that we know what's going on. We're going to have testing available for our faculty, our staff, and our students. We'll have a one-check COVID application that was developed by UNO and UNMC students to help us, along with what the governor's already provided in contact tracing, so that we can make good decisions and keep our faculty and staff and students safe. And yes, we'll have the ability to quarantine and isolate on campus as needed. And we will be making accommodations. We're going to be taking care of everyone. So as you might imagine, we have some students have hearing challenges. So we've already got some specially designed masks that our faculty members at UNK, UNO, and UNL will be wearing that will have clear material over their lips so that students can do lip reading. We will have faculty that are over 65 years, have other medical issues, and some students that maybe don't even just feel safe coming to campus for whatever reason. And we'll be making accommodations for them. We will be able to offer an online parallel to just about every course that we teach to accommodate for any situation. Now, we'll be doing some additional things. We're going to be de-densifying our campuses. We're very fortunate here in Nebraska that we have the benefit of geography. We have a wide spread out main campus, East Campus at UNL. Even our metropolitan campus at UNO and Omaha is fairly spread out. And of course, Kearney is relatively spread out. We can take advantage of that. We'll be de-densifying the dorm rooms. We'll be de-densifying the classrooms. So a class that might normally have 40 students in it, now maybe they have only 15 to 20 because they'll be spread out. And we'll be looking at space where we do have extra space to make sure we can do these things. So every campus has got a little bit of a unique setup, but working together collaboratively, all of the chancellors have come up with a lot of common themes on de-densifying, keeping our faculty and students safe, being reactive as we need to be, being dynamic and flexible, but ultimately providing that in-person education as a priority. And there are other things that we are now able to open up. As many of you know, the arts and many of the experiential learning opportunities, for example, dance, ballet, music. Those are things that really were difficult to do in a remote or through Zoom education, but now we'll be able to bring those back. And even the Lead Center will be now ready to open up because the arts are so important to us, to bring that back and do it in a safe manner where we will use the social distancing within that 2,500 seat beautiful auditorium. So we're looking forward to welcoming that back. And I know a lot of people have questions about sports. I am going to remain optimistic, as I have said here at this podium many times, that we will have sports this fall in the state of Nebraska. I followed the announcement yesterday about NSAA and high school athletics. I know a lot of you are aware that the MIAA, in which UNK plays, has chosen to delay their season to go into mid to late September. And the Big Ten has already made some announcements about conference-only athletics for football and the other Olympic-style sports. And then we're still waiting to hear where the Summit League may go for UNO. But make no mistake, I, along with the rest of Nebraskans, want to see sports back, and I will be right there with all of you cheering on the Lopers, the Mavericks, and the Huskers. Now with that, I'd like to just say again, thank you to the governor for all of his support, all of the people of Nebraska. We'll have a lot more detailed information on all of this that's available right now on all of our university websites. You can go to any of those unique campuses and get a lot more detail. And as more information becomes available, we'll be happy to make it. So, Governor, thank you again, and I'll turn the podium back over to you.
Thank you very much, President Carter. And I'm one of those people looking forward to sports this fall, too. So excited to hear that. We'll look forward to working with you to make sure we can make that happen. Another area when it comes to higher education is our community colleges that do a wonderful job of educating our young people here in the state. As part of the CARES Act, one of the things we did is dedicate $16 million to a workforce retraining initiative to be able to help young people or anybody else who wants to upgrade their skills. Maybe they've lost their job, they want to get that certification, that next certification, and be able to help them take the next better paying job. And so we set aside that $16 million that will create about 12,363 grants that will be administered through, will be administered by the community colleges. So the first stop, anybody who's interested in those would want to make was maybe talk to your local community college first. You can find more information about that at getnebraskagrowing.nebraska.gov. Which is the Department of Economic Development's website for this. But really, this is going to be in a program administered by our community colleges to be able to work directly with students, to be able to figure out exactly what they can do. Again, the CARES Act money has to be spent by the end of the year here, so it is going to be something more short-term in nature. Maybe some of these courses will end in December, maybe run as late as March, but we'd have to have that commitment before the end of the year to be able to dedicate that CARES Act money for it. So we're very excited about this program to help develop the skills of people here in Nebraska and make sure they can take that next best paying job. And to be able to talk a little bit more about that is Greg Adams, who's the executive director for our Association of the Community Colleges, to be able to give us a little bit more impact or insight on how those community colleges are going to be working with this. I know part of the deal also is that they'll have job coaches to be able to help people really evaluate their options with this. So Greg, would you please come up and talk a little bit about that?
Thank you, Governor. To make it as simple as I can, because it really is that. Long before there was pandemic, we know that we have had unfilled job positions all across the state, from one end to the other, and many of those in higher demand, higher wage jobs. And we've struggled to try to fill those, and our community colleges are critical in trying to do that. What this program provides is a kind of incentive to take people who have been unemployed or underemployed as a result of COVID that want to upskill and find themselves something different to work at. It provides an incentive for them to do that in the form of a scholarship. Our community colleges are positioned, we are every day, long before pandemic, we are positioned to know what the job needs are within every service area of our community colleges. We have programs, training programs developed. Now, for this particular grant, This is all about short-term training. We have to move, and we need to move quickly. We have these people who are unemployed and underemployed, and we need to get them back into the workforce as quickly as we can, and maybe in a job that they're feeling better about. And by federal regulations, we've also got to move to get this money out the door. Our community colleges already have short-term programs in place as well as long-term, and once we heard about this and we knew that we were going to be directly involved in it, we've even fashioned some shorter-term programs to satisfy the needs of this grant. So our colleges have already been working with the Department of Labor and the Department of Economic Development to make this happen. It's been a very short, crunch time, but we can do that. It's what we're in the business of doing, to knowing what our employers need, having the programming or be able to create the programming, and right now we're out casting the net, trying to capture the students. We are getting phone calls at all of our colleges asking about it, and we'll bring them in, get them into these short-term training programs, and get them into jobs. And we're also trying to attach some job experience along the way, right along with the training. Thank you, Governor, for the opportunity to get at this money, and I truly believe it's going to make a difference.
Great. Thank you very much, Greg. And again, we're very excited about the ability to work with our community colleges that, as you mentioned, do such wonderful work in helping get people trained to be able to take that next best paying job. So thank you very much for being here today. All right. So, Taylor, just a couple of things before we get into that. Upcoming schedule. So Thursday, we've got the Korean War Veterans ceremony at 10 a.m. So that is going to be the next thing that we have on the schedule for public briefing, again, focused on our Korean War veterans. And with that, Taylor, what questions did we have that might have been texted in, because I don't have any up here?
Jim Daco from the World Herald would like to know the NSCA wrote a letter criticizing your lack of support for a mask mandate, and they had a variety of requests. Did you have any response to the letter that you wanted to make?
With regard to the letter from the NSCA, we are working with the Department of Education, who is really taking the lead on how to get kids back in classrooms this fall. And with regard to the mask issues, again, in appropriate use, we encourage people to use masks.
Stephanie from KMTV would like to know your opinion and President Carter's opinion on the Fair Pay-to-Play Act. Is it something that you support?
So Stephanie with KMTV wants to know about the Fair Pay-to-Play Act. As this is legislation that just got passed or got the final round reading today, my understanding is typically we don't comment on that legislation because now I've got 5 days to either sign it or veto it. But I will, President Carter, invite you to come up and say a few words about it.
Thank you, Governor. And as you might imagine, we've been tracking this legislation very closely. And I want to say publicly that I'm pleased that the Senate has voted to support the name, image, and likeness for our college athletes. I think it is a good support for our college athletes. I would like to see a national ruling on it because that would make it come across better for our nation across the entire NCAA enterprise. But very, very pleased. I say a personal thank you to Senator Hunt and Senator LaGrone for working this, and they have worked this closely with our university.
President Carter, there's a few questions for you from the World Herald if you want to stay up there. Alvia from the World Herald would like to know what happens if a student or a professor tests positive. Will that class move online or just that person be quarantined, and how will contact tracing be done?
So we'll be prepared to handle any situation when it comes to a student or faculty member becoming positive. Obviously, we'll have the ability to use contact tracing. The One Check COVID app will also help in screening for future. And if we need to, we can shift to a remote education, but we will not necessarily just be spring-loaded on a single case. Every campus will use their own different rules for how to do this. I have total faith and confidence in our chancellors and how they're attacking this and being prepared for that situation.
She'd also like to know what guidance is being given to students during their non-classroom hours, and will extracurricular activities be allowed to continue?
Yeah, so a lot of things will be different on the campus. As we talked about de-densification, we can do a lot to control what happens in the classroom. We can do a lot what happens in our sports arenas and at the performing arts centers. there's going to have to be some work done here on the culture of what it's like to be on a college campus. We're going to spend a lot of time talking to our students so that they take care of themselves. This is what this is all about, taking care of themselves. So, going out and being out in town in large groups and parties, I think our students are going to find that's going to be behavior that's going to put them in a bad place over time. We want to make sure that they have all of the tools in their kit bag to help protect themselves and protect others so that we can continue on with the in-person experience. Our dining halls, for example, we're not going to be using cafeteria-style food. We're going to do a lot of single takeout. There's going to be limited seating for that. So, we're trying to think through every single detail that will take care of our students, not just because we want to be open, but because we think there's a need and they want to be open. They have told us by survey, 80% of our incoming students say they want the in-person experience. So I know they'll be motivated to do the right thing.
So President Carter, as the father of 3 college-age students, I can tell you're exactly right, that they want that in-person experience. And just anecdotally, listen to other parents and young people that some were saying, hey, if I can't get that in-person experience, I'm just going to take time off. I'm going to do something else. So I know the students are very interested in that in-person. And I can tell you again, as a parent of 3 college-age folks, the parents want them to have that in-person experience too. We want them to go away to school. So we're very anxious for that.
Don Walton would like to
Yeah.
know, have you decided whether to contest the Lincoln mask order?
So Don Walton's asking about the Lincoln mask order, and again, we're still reviewing whether the mayor has the legal authority for that.
Becca from NET wants to know, do we know when the Test Nebraska lab might achieve a level of 7,000 tests per day? And do you know the most recent average Test Nebraska tests per day number?
So the question was from Becca from NTV, or NET, sorry, wanted to know, do we know what the, when the capacity will be up and what is the current number of tests per day that have been processed? So we're still working on getting the equipment here, and then the expansion has to be validated, so I don't have a date to give you right now with regard to that. And then Dr. Antone, I'm going to ask you to come up. Do you have those numbers on the figures for what Test Nebraska has been doing lately?
So as far as Test Nebraska numbers go, there's been over 753,000 assessments done and reassessments done. There's been over, 238,000 unique, which means 238,000 unique Nebraskans have taken the assessment. We've done, Governor said 93,000, actually it's 94,000 tests so far in Nebraska, and we're averaging right around 1,600 to 700 Test Nebraska tests per day.
1,600 to 1,700.
1,600 to 1,700 Test Nebraska tests per day. I think our highest day was 3,600 one day a week ago. It's a lot of it's depending on the long-term care facility testing coming in and some of the other testing that we call acute testing. As far as the percentage breakdown of how the tests are working now in Nebraska, Test Nebraska has far and away exceeded any other mechanism of testing that we've done. They account for now over 52% of all the tests that are done in Nebraska, including all the hospital testing and everything else. So it's been extremely successful, and I can tell you the CMOs and the CEOs that I talk to in the hospitals, they're extremely pleased with how Test Nebraska is going now and how it's going to be expanded. So,
Thank you, Dr. Antone.
We have a question from Paul Hamill. Can you say why the state is expanding Test Nebraska when we're only doing about 5,300 tests a day or less? Are we going to set up more testing sites? How are we going to use the new expansion?
So Paul Hamill wants to know, from the World Herald, wants to know what's the reason for doing the expanded capacity at our Test Nebraska lab. And I think it gets to a couple things. One, we know that with more testing, we can do greater surveillance so that we can accommodate, for example, we're doing the long-term care facilities right now. We also anticipate as students come back to school this fall, for example, whether it's the University of Nebraska or any of the other collegiate level sports, that there's likely to be testing requirements for athletes as a part of this. Testing requirements may happen, again, if we've got students who need to get tested. Again, we're looking at just, as Dr. Antone mentioned, we bumped up against our capacity at the Test Nebraska lab within the last week or two. So we see just in general, as we're doing greater testing, that there's just more demand for it overall. So you can anticipate that as we get that capacity brought online, we'll be expanding the opportunities for people to get scheduled to be able to do that testing. So again, we want to make sure that we're focusing on getting people that test as quickly as possible. Test Nebraska is a great option to be able to do it. As Dr. Antone said, last week we were over half the tests that were done in the state. So being able to expand that lab capacity to be able to handle more is going to make sense from the standpoint of handling additional demand this fall, and then also allowing us to make sure we keep a good turnaround time.
Justin from the Scottsbluff Star-Herald wants to know, there's schools in the Panhandle that are requiring masks. Is that something that you would seek to prevent?
So Justin from the Star-Herald wants to know that there are schools in the Panhandle seeking to use masks, and would I seek to prevent that? And the answer is no. Again, schools need to be able to work, to be able to do what they need to do to be able to make sure that we're slowing the spread of the virus. And I think one of the things that everybody needs to remember just in general about schools, right? So schools, like our K through 12 schools in particular, is probably the densest population that we have anywhere in our society. Generally, we've got 20 or 30 people in a room for an extended period of time. That's one of the most concentrations of people that we have. And so wearing masks, and when you've got that kind of concentration, if you can't space those people 6 feet apart, is going to make a lot of sense. So again, it's really going to, as I mentioned, going to have to be almost a building by building decision by the school districts about how they do social distancing and make sure we're slowing the spread of the virus.
Kathy Beeler from KTV wants to know, she says that you seem to be questioning Lincoln's mask mandate, but you're encouraging people to wear masks. Why is that the case?
So Kathy Beeler wants to know, why am I questioning the mayor's legal authority to be able to issue a mandate while encouraging people to wear masks? So again, one of the things, folks, that we got to remember is that while there's a lot of people working very hard to be able to develop new treatments or come up with a vaccine, that we can't be guaranteed there will be a vaccine. We may need to manage this for the long term. And so that's how we need to think, which means adopting a mask is part of how we need to be just thinking about everyday life. So we've managed to get through the peak of our hospitalizations nearly 2 months ago without doing a stay-at-home order, right? We didn't do a stay-at-home order, but we did ask Nebraskans that last 3 weeks of April to do 21 days to stay home, stay healthy, stay connected. And we explained why that was important. And guess what? Nebraskans did the right thing. They limited their mobility, and that helped us slow the spread of the virus to help preserve our hospital system. Masks are the same way. We want to encourage people to wear masks under the appropriate situations. So if you are going to the store, or if you're going to be in a confined space closer than 6 feet from somebody else, that's a great opportunity to wear a mask. We want people to learn that that's how we use masks as one of the tools we use to be able to slow the spread of the virus. And we have successfully been able to preserve our hospital capacity here in Nebraska without heavy-handed government telling us what to do. We didn't do a stay-at-home order. We're not going to do mandates with regard to masks. We want to educate people on the appropriate use of them and then encourage them to do that, and Nebraskans do the right thing. So that's what we want to do, is make sure that we're not bringing the heavy-handed hand of the government down here. And then let's just think about, just from the standpoint of, if you are going to make not wearing a mask a misdemeanor, that's a crime. Is that really how you want your police to be spending their time enforcing that, something like that? So I think, again, what we want to do is educate Nebraskans on what is the appropriate way to use a mask, have them use their judgment in their own lives individually as to when they need to wear that mask, when they're going to be closer than 6 feet to somebody for an extended period of time. That's a great opportunity to be able to wear a mask.
Aaron from KMTV wants to know why long-term care facilities were directed to use Test Nebraska and St. Elizabeth's and not to use the MPHL to do their baseline testing for reopening.
So Aaron at where?
KMTV.
KMTV wants to know why long-term care facilities were offered to be able to use Test Nebraska versus the Nebraska Public Health Lab. So first of all, again, I think she actually said required. We didn't require any of the long-term care facilities to use Test Nebraska. We offered that to them as a way for them to be able to test their staff and their residents if necessary. So as part of our plan for allowing long-term care facilities to allow visitors, they all have to be in phase 3, which we're all in right now, and then they also have to test their frontline staff before they can start allowing visitors. all those long-term care facilities were, it was up to them on how they wanted to do that. We offered Test Nebraska as a way to be able to get that done and made that available to them to be able to use that. The fact of the matter is, Test Nebraska has the capacity to do, as we've talked about, up to 3,600 tests a day, whereas the public health lab really kind of maxes out somewhere over 400, maybe can get up to 600, but is not going to be able to do more than 800. And if you're thinking about literally tens of thousands of people in our long-term care facilities, whether you're talking about staff or residents, Test Nebraska is going to be just a much better alternative to be able to process those tests.
And finally, Susan Littlefield would like you to comment on teachers are concerned that if they do remote learning, they're not going to get the hours in for their students to graduate. I believe she's talking about K through 12 school requirements that you do a certain number of hours per year.
So Susan Littlefield with KRVN is concerned about the remote learning with students and the students not having enough hours to be able to graduate. Is that right? So again, this would be really a question for Matt Bloomstein, our Commissioner of Education, because the Department of Education is the one who's really going to determine all those rules with regard to the hours students have to have and so forth. So I really would defer to him with regard to how he's going to handle that. But what I can tell you is, again, you know, the Commissioner's expectation and my expectation is that superintendents are going to work to be able to have kids in classrooms this fall. It's not going to look like it did last year. It's going to have to be different. We've talked about things like wearing masks in the classrooms and so forth, and kids being spread out. You know, that's going to happen this year. And certainly there are other accommodations that you're going to have to do. I was actually listening to one of our superintendents talking about their plan yesterday, and they were talking about, you know, a certain percentage of students and parents are not comfortable coming back. So they're going to make accommodations to those students to do remote learning. But other students and parents do want to go back, and so they're going to manage the classroom to be able to do that, whether it's, again, wearing masks or cohorting students or whatever to limit that opportunity for that virus to spread. So I think that what you're going to see is superintendents are being thoughtful about how to implement this. I know there's a lot of people working, doing a lot of hard work and a lot of long hours, figuring out how to make it so that students can come back and have that classroom experience while still making sure that we are looking out for their health and that we're making sure we slow the spread of the virus. And of course, I've talked about students, but that also accommodation is going to also have to happen with teachers too. Some teachers will want to be back in the classroom. Other teachers may have an underlying health care condition where that may not be possible for them, so schools will have to make accommodations to be able to do that as well. And I think as President Carter, you were just kind of indicating for your professors at the university.
Susan's further clarifying that she's referring to student teachers who are looking to get their credential, may not be able to get their hours in.
Okay, Susan Littlefield was talking about student teachers, and okay, so the answer's still the same. We're working with the Department of Education. It's really a Matt Bloomstead answer, but this is about student teachers not worrying about not getting enough hours. And we have weighed some of the regulations with regard to the requirements to get some of these accreditations. And so if the Department of Education want to work on that with us, we can work on that with them as well. Okay, questions from our crowd in here? Yes, Andrew.
Governor, since Test Nebraska actually tests faster in most places, and you're expanding Test Nebraska, any more thought to allowing individual doctors, if they're doing a test, to submit it directly to Test Nebraska, have it tested so they can get those results back faster, as opposed to sending them to some lab?
So the question was, as we're expanding Test Nebraska, is there going to be the possibility of doctors being able to send in their labs into Test Nebraska? You know what? It's not we're certainly not going to do it at first because we've got other needs, and that's not really how the system works. But and again, we got all sorts of issues around HIPAA, and we're asking the patients permission to be able to send their data off. So there's a lot of other complications that really make it difficult for individual doctors to, they can direct their patients there, and as long as the patients share the information back with the doctor, that's fine. But because we don't have the relationship with the doctors, we have the relationship with the patients who show up at Test Nebraska. There's all sorts of HIPAA laws and rules and regulations around who we can tell about that. So it really makes it, much more awkward to be able to manage that. So I'm not saying at some point down the road, we might not be able to figure a system out around that, but it's not going to happen anytime in the near future. Yeah. President Carter.
Do you know what kind of financial investment your teams have had to make in the University of Nebraska in general to bring classes to happen in the fall?
So the question is, do we know what type of financial investment we had to make to bring our students back for the fall? I would tell you that the state has been really great working with us in terms of personal protection equipment, the testing, the contact tracing, even the One-Check COVID app, which was developed by our students. There's no cost to that. Where I would tell you there has been some investment, and I look at it as an investment, is making sure that we've made ourselves affordable and accessible more than ever. And that's the program called Nebraska Promise, as well as the freezing of tuition for fiscal years 22 and 23. So there are some costs to that, but the question is, what would you look like if you didn't do that? Not what does it cost to do it. We estimate, our model showed that we would have been down as much as 15% in enrollment just coming into this year. It would have taken us 10 years to recover from that, just in the number of students from the state of Nebraska, which is about 80% of our 51,000 students. So those were relatively small investments that we took on ourselves, that we tightened our own belt to afford, with no passing of those costs on to our students or going to the state legislature to ask for that money. So yes, there are some amount of costs. I mean, I can tell you, I've got a Husker mask that I wear, to show school spirit, and the state didn't provide this. Chancellor Ronnie Green gave this to me, and I'm really proud to wear that. So yeah, there's going to be some cost to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
I just had another one. You mentioned you guys did a survey in regards to students, and it said around 80% or so said they're happy to come back. Did you have a similar one done with faculty and staff and their comfortability with returning back to fall classes?
So the question is, we did a survey and we followed a lot of the national trend lines on what percent of students said they wanted to come back for in-person education. Did we do the same thing for our faculty and staff? And the answer is yes, we've worked collaboratively with our faculty and staff, and yes, there have been some small pockets, I would say around the 10% range or less. It varies on campus. Some of it varies a little bit between unionized and non-unionized faculty, but by and large, the great majority of the faculty want to be on campus. Now, of course, there are individual cases, and as I mentioned, we're taking care of those and we're accommodating for those.
And I have one final one. In terms of buildings from day to day or month to month, is there a deep clean service that you guys are interested in contracting? Or are you going to leave it to janitor work, or what is that cleanliness process going to be for the campus?
So the question is, are we investing in some more deep cleaning, different type of cleaning, different cleaning contracts compared to what we did before? And again, I would tell you this will be on a campus per campus. The chancellors are empowered to take care of that. And yes, there'll probably be some additional cost to that for that level of deep cleaning. But everyone is aware that that is a necessity given where we are. So yes, we will be doing more cleaning than we had been doing in the past.
Just kind of a question for you, sir, sorry. Just kind of talking about fall sports again, specifically football. Have you talked with other system presidents at other Big Ten schools about what that could look like or what plan might be for the fall?
So the question is relating to sports. Have I personally talked to other Big Ten presidents in terms of relations of what they're doing and how they view the sports? I will tell you that when it comes to the Big Ten Conference, Chancellor Ronnie Green, who is, by other states' definition as a campus leader, the president for UNL and the Cornhuskers. So he sits on all those meetings. Bill Moose sits in there for the athletic directors. They've been exceptional in keeping me well informed. I've been part of the conversation with them. And yes, not every campus president sees it the way we do. And I will tell you, as a new Nebraskan, I am so proud to say that we are one of the few states in the nation that are completely aligned, from the governor to the campus leadership, to the faculty, to the students, to the mayors, to the coaches, and the players. We want to see fall sports, and we think we can do it safely. So we've made that very clear. We believe in the mission of athletics and what it is for the spirit of American competition. We think the college experience includes athletics. So yeah, we're very bullish on sports here in the fall. But we're not going to be foolish about it. We're going to let the science, and of course we have to have somebody to play. So, for example, Rutgers is really challenged right now. Most of their campus is not going to be in person. I don't know how they get to fall sports if they don't have students on campus. So there's going to be unique situations on every campus, and that's what the Big Ten as well as the other Power 5 conferences are going through right now. But I know they're working really hard on it. I think you're going to be seeing some more information come out soon. So the question is, are we requiring testing for every single student that comes back on campus? The answer is no. So we won't be testing 51,000 students on arrival. I do know that there are some campuses around the country that are attempting to do that, and they're finding that to be incredibly difficult. I'm very thankful for the way the state has made testing available and that they will be able to meet our needs. I would tell you that we anticipate somewhere between 10 and maybe a little bit higher of that of our students coming in that will either ask for or need a test. And again, the One-Check COVID application that we will be using across all of our campuses is a great screening tool that'll help inform somebody that they should get a test.
And also, do you have any gauge on how many faculty have asked for a disability waiver so that they don't have to show up in person?
I don't have that exact, and the question is how many faculty members have asked for accommodation because of either a disability or an age or a medical waiver. I don't have the exact number. I would put it less than 10% as a guesstimate based on the conversations that I've heard thus far. As we get to that level of detail, we'll be happy to share that, as we've been incredibly transparent in everything that we're doing.
Looking at enrollment for your fall semesters, or your fall semester across your campuses, do you have an idea of how many students applied for online classes because of fear of fall enrollment being down and or less students going in hopes that fall does happen?
So the question is, what percentage of students requested online-only education as a full-time student compared this year to maybe last year? And did I understand you have a question about enrollment overall?
That would be all right, yeah.
Okay.
How many students you're anticipating?
So again, I won't be able to tell you what the total number enrollment will be until they actually come on campus. All of our students across all 4 campuses, to include NCTA, will be physically in person on 24 August. As you're aware, UNL will be starting a week earlier, albeit remotely, to fill their academic requirements in their year early by Thanksgiving. If our applications from Nebraskans are an indication of where our enrollment is going, we saw a 21% rise in applications from April 17th when we opened up Nebraska Promise, that would be open, that we would hold tuition rates for the next 2 years, and our academic calendar review. So that's an incredible change. If you were to ask me where we are this year compared to last year, it's about 9.5% higher in terms of Nebraska applications right now compared to where we were last year. Now, we know we're going to see some impact in some of our out-of-state students. We are going to see a drop in freshman international students. So I would tell you that my prediction, without having a crystal ball here, is that our overall numbers are going to look very flat, maybe even up a little bit, maybe even up in total tuition hours, but maybe down a little bit in tuition revenue because of our out-of-state and international student tuition revenues. Now, when it comes to what percentage of students have asked for full online, yes, we've seen that go up on most of our campuses between 7 and 12% over the last couple of years, and this year is no exception. So, there are probably closer to about 15 to 20% of the overall student body that are looking for full-time online education. But what is really changing, and this is what's interesting, this is the hybrid or the blend, or some on I think at UNL they're calling it HybFlex type of education, where you do some things remotely because it fits your academic profile, some because of the class sizes, and then some classes that just can't be done remotely. These are laboratories. Think about our medical folks. We were talking about, student teachers, but, for doctors and dentists that actually have to do some hands-on experiential part of their education, those things, we just have to be able to do in person. And that's why I'm very excited about making sure we retain all that. But the majority of our students, and I'll say that, again, I'm going to go on a limb here in a prediction that nearly 100% of all of our students, all 51,000, will be taking some small part of their education remotely. A, because we've gotten so good at it, and B, now it is a multiplier to the education. This is where the future of higher education is going. And if you can't get that right, you're going to get left behind. And I'm really proud of our faculty and staff. I think we're one of the institutions that's got this blend right.
Time for just a couple more questions.
Are you seeing a decrease in the number of people wanting to stay in the dorms?
Now the question is, are we seeing a decrease in the people that want to stay in the dorms? Let me talk about dorms and even Greek life. As you all know, Greek life on all of our campuses is pretty large. We have worked extraordinarily hard to de-densify those spaces. We have the benefit of very robust off-campus living, very large Greek houses, and of course, our dormitories that are on campus, usually focused on the younger undergraduate students. It's been relatively flat in terms of who's wanted to live in the dorms, but we're making sure that we're doing it as safely as we can to include in the Greek houses and spreading our students out. This is a really important part of the student living situation. The college campus is for so many students. There are a lot of students that come from the more rural areas, whether it be Western Nebraska or even our out-of-state students. They don't benefit by going home if we go to an all-remote education. They may be better benefited by staying in their dorm or off-base or off-campus living, because that was going to be where they're going to have high-speed internet capability. They've got other resources. They've got better access to their faculty. And again, this socialization, which is such an important part of the maturation process for these young people that come to our campus. So again, this is why we're spending so much time to make sure we're getting this right.
There's a lot of skeptics out there. I mean, how confident are you that we just know we're not going to open this up and then close it down within a couple of weeks?
Well, I can tell you that we're working with the best medical professionals that I know in the country, that we have our dedicated faculty and staff. I mean, this is a team effort. And one of the reasons I'm so appreciative of the governor letting me have a chance to come out here and speak to this is we want to make sure that everyone, from our faculty to our staff to our students to the families of Nebraska, trust that we are being as open and transparent about this. We've been predictive about what we were going to do so that people can plan to what we said we're going to do, and we're going to execute. I mean, I learned after being in uniform for 38 years that hope is not a course of action. So we're not going into this with a hope and a prayer. We're going into this with a bias for action. We're using procedure, science, and as I've come to appreciate here in Nebraska, people have a lot of common sense here, and they're going to live their life with a common sense approach, and that's the type of way that we want to run our university system.
We have time for the last question.
All right,
Thank
thank
you,
you very much,
Governor.
President Carter, appreciate it. All right, seeing no more last questions, I'm not going to, okay, great. I just want to again say thank you to everybody who has been working so hard to slow the spread of coronavirus here in our state. The sacrifices you have made have helped us make sure we preserve our hospital system, and I remind people to please continue to think about signing up for testnebraska.com, especially as we expand our lab capacity and we're looking at transitioning to other additional locations. You should see more testing slots open up around the state. And then, of course, please remember our social distancing rules. Stay 6 feet apart from people when you're out in public. Make sure that you wear that mask when you go to the store and wash your hands often. Those are 3 great things you can do to make sure that you slow the spread of virus here in our state. Thank you all very much again, and we'll be back, not in this room. I think we're in the rotunda. Is that right, Taylor? For the 10 a.m.?
Planning to host it right here on Thursday morning.
Thursday morning, 10 a.m. would be in the rotunda. Oh, no, we're back here. Oh, let's take it back. We're going to be right here, sorry. We'll be right here in this room, 10 a.m. to celebrate our Korean War veterans. Thank you all very much, and have a great rest of your day.